Let's make a duck call. Hi, I'm Gary from Manly Stuff and Things, and today we're going to start working on a duck call. This call is a little bit different. Typically we don't use a mandrel in it, so it saves us a little time. We have a little bit more latitude to do what we want with hole sizes. On this call here, if you are going to buy an insert from one of the companies, you're going to want to go ahead and bore a 5/8 hole through the body of the call instead of what we start with the 9/16. Anyway, let's get started. We're going to try to make this call right here, or one very close to it, as far as having a collar here and the main body be one piece here. The first thing we need to do is make this collar. As you notice, this one here has an accent whoop piece in here with two pieces of ebony on either end. So, to start with that, let's go ahead and see what our materials are going to be. We're going to start off with a piece of locust burl, a piece of paduk, or padalk, however you want to pronounce it, and a piece of Gabon ebony. And that's going to be sandwiched on either side of this piece of paduk for the collar on the call. So, anyway, I'm going to cut this down, take this, and we're going to square it up, and then we're going to take it over to the lathe, and we're going to go ahead and drill a hole through that. So, let's get started. To the lathe, and we're going to get this piece right here now glued together. We've got our paduk in the center, and we have our blackwood or Gabon ebony on either end. So after that, we're going to drill a hole through the center. We're going to put it on the lathe, and we're going to turn it down round. As you can see, I used the drill bit in my chuck and the tailstock. And the tailstock, by pushing it on there, keeps this really flat. That way you get a fairly concentric hole in with this, with the angle of the face of the wood. So anyway, now we need to change this out and go to the standard dog and knife center. So what we're going to do, put this in here, my chucky. Now I didn't put a mark on here, and so what I'm going to do, like lots of times you'll take a saw and make some grooves in there. What we're going to do is we're going to grab an older dog that I have here. We're going to set it right up here, and I'm going to put that right in there, and I'm going to grab this hammer, and we're going to give this a little love tap. Okay, now we've got a mark in here. We can go right back onto this. Center up here. Use our original hole for a pilot for the live center. Lock down our tailstock. And we're not too crazy about what we're going to make on this size right here. We're just making sure that it's round and hopefully oversized on the call we're going to make. So here we go. There we go, round it off. When I'm doing this, I'm making sure that I'm making a fairly straight plane across here, and I'm always looking on this back side, because that's what has to grab in the chuck. If it's got a taper in it, it's not going to grab it very well. So anyway, now we need to change back to the chuck. What I want to do here is that, if you can see, I've left some of this call proud out here, because once we get our borehole through here, we're going to face this off to where we're real perpendicular with the borehole. So now we need to change and get our chuck in. I keep putting stuff down. This shop eats stuff. we're going to change out and we're going to put our chuck on our lathe. We're going to put it in and we're going to drill a 7/8 hole down through the center of it. One of the things to remember is leave on this outside edge here, and when you're in the chuck, is leave this edge just a little proud. So once you've got the bore hole through here, you can come back and slightly face this a little bit to make sure you have one very true edge with your hole that goes through the center. And we're going to put our 7/8 inch paddle bit in here and go ahead and make that 7/8 bore through there. Good sharp paddle bit works really good for this. Pull the rest off. Touch in that hole. All right, here we go. There we are. Okay. We are nice and smooth. I kind of keep it very flat. Keep the tool on it flat so we're concentric with the face of this hole in here. So anyway, that's the end of making the collar right now. Now we can turn and start on the body. Alright, after that we're going to go ahead and take our piece of locust burl and we're going to turn it down according to our jig pattern here.
Go.
Here, watch your own.
Get it out. I don't know what's going to look good.
Not that. Alright, we got this nice and straight for the chuck. I'm going to go ahead and reference my jig here and see right about where we want this salvage edge to be. It's going to be right here. So we're going to leave that alone, and from this point I'm going to start measuring. We still have quite a bit to take off, so I'm going to go ahead and take some more off of it. I think we can pretty much get a start now. Boy, the more I cut off it, the prettier it is. Right now we're at 1 inch, we're right where we need to be. So we're still a little proud. It's still going to be kind of beefier than what we've got here, and that's fine. We can always take that off once everything's been glued on. And excuse me, by leaving a little more on here, when we do our final cuts on everything, we'll have enough in case something gets out of concentric. We can then have enough on this to bring everything back true. So what I'm going to do now is go ahead and lay this on here and put some marks. This is where I want a lanyard groove, right here. And then right here is going to be the face where our collar will go back up into here. So that collar is going to sit on there. Where's my nice pretty faced area? Right there. The collar is going to go just like that. So we want that mark on there too. And we're going to bring it out to about here, and that's going to be about where we want the collar to end. So I'm going to go ahead and mark these off a little bit better, and we're going to start taking this down and making it look like a duck call. And this one here is not that important, but we're going to go ahead and put it on anyway. All right, here we go. Here's the lanyard ring. Okay, now if you can see here, we've got the lanyard ring. I got my first little takedown of where this accent ring is going to go. Now we bored it 7/8 of an inch all the way through here, which is 825, 875, 875. So what we want to do is make sure that we don't go below 875 on here. We're going to take this and take a kind of a peek at what we have here. And we've got quite a bit to go down on this. So we're still well over an inch there, so let's take some more off of that until we get it closer. I know I'm still too big, but ooh, we took quite a bit. All right, so now we're getting closer. So what I'm going to do, we know this piece has to get down, be brought down at least to here. So I'm going to transition over this piece and start taking it down, and I'm going to be checking it for the 7/8, and then when I get above it, I'll just clean this up, and then we'll take this back down. I know it doesn't make sense, but it will here in a minute. Let's see where we're at. Real close. We are right at 900,000. So we're excuse me. We're still big for our collar. So what I'm going to do is now I'm going to take this dimension. I'm going to chase it all the way back to here, and that way we know we have enough to take off the collar. So here we go. Okay. Ooh, right in there. So now I'm going to reference my jig again. We're going to put this right on the same line, those two shoulders up, and I'm going to put a mark here where I want that collar to end. I'm going to go ahead and mark it. And I typically like to use really small tools on this. This burl is never solid as a normal piece of duck calling blank would be. Anytime you get burl, that's why we're getting all that vibration, squeak, and sound, because it's just really not a solid piece of wood. So I use small tools and take little cuts, and it keeps it from cracking and chipping out. So I'm going to go ahead and take this down to where we're below 7/8 of an inch. Okay, and we're going to end up with something that looks a little like this. Show the step that I put in there, but this section here is below 7/8 or smaller than 7/8 just by a little bit, and this section is above 7/8. So at this point, we have our collar with our nice faced off edge. I'm going to keep one hand on here and make sure we don't lose our setup on the dog. I'm going to slide that back, find our faced off pretty edge, and it's just going to get slid right back on here. We're going to put the tailstock back on, give her a tighten. Now, slipping on here real freely. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep working this back. I've made sure that I've kept this square with the tool and kept it right on here to keep this face edge square. We're going to contact this so we got a clean line. I'm just going to slowly start taking this down, and I'll keep checking it multiple times until we get it to fit on there. Just got her to fit. It's got just a little bit of a wiggle to it. We'll get that with some glue. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to come back in here. I'm just going to put a couple little grooves in here so we can get a good bind on wood. I think this burl's rough enough. I don't think I'd need it, but I'm going to go ahead. All right, so there that is. We're pretty tight. Let's get some glue and see if we can't get it tightened up here. Okay, and get it all around that shoulder. If we possibly can kind of have some crawl up there. Okay. All right. All right, so I've got the glue on there. Well, we're going to go ahead and get this up here, give it a good twist. And I'll take a little bit of a rag and kind of clean the back off. All right, one more. And right now it's already starting to lock up. I can barely get it to move. So anyway, there it is with the collar on it. You see that myrtle's going to be really pretty when it's finished out. Nice tight fit right here where it joins. So that's it. All right, we've got our collar glued on. It's been about a half hour. I know the glue's set real tight on it. So what I'm going to do, I've got some inclusions right here and a couple little spots maybe right here and here. And we're going to go ahead and take a little bit of CA glue and kind of see if we can't get those buttoned up. I've got a needle here. And we're going to put just a little bit of glue in here. Work it in with this needle, make sure we're in all the little cracks. She's going through, so we're going to, before it all drains out, we're going to get it sealed. Now we're going to go ahead and pour some more in it. There's not a whole lot to that one, but we'll get something in him. Actually, that hole went here, and the glue ran out right there. The hole was all the way through. You want to get it? Okay, here's another one. Go ahead and put it right there. Put two in all the way. And that, okay, all. Okay. Seems like that'll kind of put me to wood noise in the way they turn it. Okay. So now, what I'm going to do is we're going to reference my jig again. I'll probably, right here is where I got it marked off on the jig. I probably won't take all that off. I'll leave a pretty good little margin of it on there. So let's go ahead and we're going to trim this back. And after I trim that back to where I want it, I'm going to move over here and we're going to take a parting tool, come in here and just get the start of the mouthpiece of the caul. So here we go. Okay, so we've pared this off and we've got the start for our mouthpiece. And I'm not going to go very deep because if I go too deep and start to bore, I'll come through there. This is just so we know that this is very cylindrical all the way through here now. I'm going to come in now and I'm going to really get this flat right in here to where our next move is to turn this around in a chuck and grab it right here, and then we'll start our bore holes bore holes through. We're going to take the blank out, we're going to turn it around in the chuck and put this in the chuck right here. And we're going to take a pilot drill and we're going to drill down through here until we're about a 1/2 inch past this step or where the line's drawn in. And that sets up the depth we need to have for the bore for a 1/2 inch bore. And I typically start with a 1/2 inch paddle bit. And I'll run this paddle bit in here until we're down in past and to the point where we end it. I'll mark the paddle bit off to where I get the depth right. So once you're to that point right there and you've got it down a 1/2 inch past where this collar is going to end, this collar is going to come up and end right here. So then we know that this here is going to be the first part that's going to go in our call where the soundboard and reed's going to go. This is kind of a trick to keep turning this to where it looks like we're running somewhat true for this bore. Okay, our first bore through here will be a 9/16. And what we're going to do is we're going to bring this in to where this 9/16 stops right about where the collar ends on the face side. That will give us enough clearance through the body of the call here that the reed won't contact anything. After we've gone this depth, we'll pull this one out and we'll grab a 1/2 inch because that's what our soundboard and reed and all are going to fit onto. And this 1/2 inch is then going to go into this front part of the barrel, a strong 5/8 or somewhere in that neighborhood. You want to just bring it up here into where you got quite a bit of a margin to put your soundboard in. So anyway, let's get the chuck back on here, the tailstock chuck. And so what I'm going to do is I have a Sharpie here. I'm going to lay this on here to where I want this to end, right there. And we're going to go ahead and put a mark on the Sharpie. We need to go that deep in there. So we know that, but first we're going to put a pilot hole in it. And that pilot hole can go all the way on our 1/2 inch bore. So we're going to put that pilot right there. We're going to bring that in. This might take a couple adjustments on the chuck to get it in, but so we're going to go there with our pilot hole, and we'll see if we can get this in here. And we made our depth. So we're going to pull it all the way back, lock our tailstock, keep it from falling off the lathe. And that drill bit will be very, very hot. So when I take it out, we're not going to hang on to it for very long and get rid of it. Our next one to use is our 9/16. And once again, we're going to set it up here. We've already marked it. The mark is right there. We're going to see if we got enough room to get all this in here now. We're going to get started. We're going to start real slow. We just made our mark, so we should be pretty good with that. So now we're going to pull this back. Once again, I think I can go back a little farther. Okay, we're going to take this one out and put our 1/2 inch one. Once again, it's going to be warm. Get in there. Come on. Okay, this goes out. We're going to grab our 1/2 inch one, and we've got it marked. I'm going to double check it again though. And so when I hit the end of this with this mark, we're going to have a 1/2 inch hole in here. We stopped our 9/16 somewhere about here. We're going to go a little bit farther in with the 1/2 inch. Now I've got the original point from right how bit it should be in it. I have a whole bunch of solid stuff in it. Right, here we go. Right, here it is. Now at this point, we're going to take it out of the chuck and turn it around. We still have our point for our live center on here, so when we get it set up here, what we're going to do, we're going to go ahead and switch out to our live center on this. I thought I had a different one. Put that in there. I'm going to go up to here. Bump that in. Now, I've got quite a bit exposed here. I'm going to loosen this up just a little bit to where I know I can get some free play. We're going to tighten that, and when we tighten this, we're going to see that push in this chuck just a little bit. We'll tighten it again, push, tighten, push. Okay, this should run fairly true since this was all cut at the same time. And it's perfect. So now we're going to go ahead and finish our contours on our collar and get our contour on our barrel here. And then we're going to start turning this space in here that we've left, that we have our undercut, that will eventually go inside the caul. Alright, let's see what we got. So we got a great transition right here. This one, and as you make these, you can do anything you want. I've made this one come up and be smooth. You can make another 45 off of this side. There's no real wrong way to do this. So with this setup like this, this is pretty much where I'm going to leave it. We're going to go ahead and mark how far back we want. Turn this down. That's going to end up in the caul. Is going to be about right there. And I try to take this down to where I've got a taper from this going this way, with this being the high side and this being the low side. And we'll take it down to about 3/4 of an inch, something like that, and then it'll have a taper that'll go down, so we know we'll have a sidewall to put all of our soundboard and parts in. So I'm going to grab a 1/4 inch chisel, and we're going to move this over here, and we're going to take it down. And after I get it down to about where I want it to be, I'm going to use my calipers to keep an eye on it. And once we get it to where we need to have it, we're going to, I'm going to grab a separate tool here, this one right here, and I'm going to come right here and I'm going to put a little groove right in here. And that's in case we don't get a perfect tight fit or the wood dries out or something like that. We've got a concentric groove in here to put an O-ring in. So let's get started. Run there. I think that's close enough to meter. We'll take the hair off right here at the shoulder, and I think meter. All right, we're going to put the O-ring groove in. Now with that done, we're going to put a little contour on this for decoration. Now we've pretty much got everything on the outside that we need to do. The next step, I'm just going to run some sandpaper across this real quick and clean up a few things. Let me see if I can find a better piece of sandpaper. All right. See if we can make it pretty. You can kind of see some of the character in that. It's really going to be pretty. We might have to kind of maybe refill that hole again. We can do that later on when we're put the finish on. And who knows, maybe that hole gives a little character. But you can see all the pretty burl in there and all the flame coloring in it. It comes natural with it. Beautiful. Okay, so now our next step is to pop this tailstock back, and we're going to hope that by removing this, since we've ran this in and we're using it, when we turn it, it's going to run pretty true, and it's looking really good. Now we need to put a hole in here all the way to where we catch up to this, where we got to put the soundboard in it. So typically I use a 300,000, so this one's 310, which I'm sure is a standard measurement that I don't know offhand. Start slow. Alright, let's go ahead and pull this drill out. We'll take this opportunity to go ahead and sand this down and make this front look pretty. We'll have some 100 grit or 120 grit, so it's a. Remember, we still have the little X's that we put in there from when we had it pounded on the dog. So we're going to start with that. You want to use small tools and take very, very small cuts. So we're going to go like that, and I have one right here that'll be just about right for that. So we're going to start here. Now it's kind of the time to part this piece off of here. We've got everything sanded, you know, all the work that we can do on it like that. So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to move this back, pull this off, put this here, chuck out, and we're going to go ahead and put our live center back in. It's got a steep enough grade on it that we can kind of get it in here, bump it up on there, kind of catch it a little bit. I'm not going to put a whole lot of pressure against it. It's just there to kind of get in that cone that we cut. And now we're going to find my little part off tool, which is right here. And we're going to move this in. And we're just going to kind of get in here and kind of get that cone. And you don't have very far to go because you've got a 1/2 inch hole in there. So, a little more violent than usual. There's what we, see if I can get some of the rough stuff off. Let me have a little piece of sandpaper here. As you can see, we're fairly well centered. I mean, even that long bore, our sides of our walls are pretty close. But there's our 1/2 inch hole right there to put our soundboard and reed in. And you can see the 310 thousandths hole we drilled in to go back to their direction. So now we're going to set this barrel aside. I'm going to pull the tailstock off because I just need a bunch of room to work here. And what we're going to do is I'm going to try to come in here on the front of this and cut this inside taper, and we're going to keep checking this over and over to make sure we've got it right. So once again, small little cuts. I'm going to take some sandpaper and we're going to sand the inside of this real quick, get some of that rough chatter out. Lots of times that can hang it up too. It is just so perfectly. Alright, we're going to call that good. I think it'll go in. The next thing we need to do is we can part it off here, and then we'll turn the whole caul around and get it set up so we can finish this over here. If you notice, remember we put this O-ring in here, and if you can kind of get an idea where that's going to be, you know, it's going to be back in here almost about where I've got my little burn line. I'm going to go ahead and put a little groove on the inside of this real quick, and that way if we ever do need a O-ring in it, we'll have it. So this won't take but a second. We'll turn this on and grab a long cut here. Come in, back up. Groove. Yeah. Now I'm going to sand that groove down so it hangs up, and then we're going to cut this line off and turn it around. At this point, lots of times what I like to do is use a hacksaw. We'll run it slow speed. We're going to drop that right in there, and we're just going to cut this off. Kind of got the hacksaw blade pitched back just a little bit towards the, you'll feel it bump like that, and you know you're just about through, because I've cut a hole in it somewhere. And there we are. So now, we're going to take our stud out that's no longer useful to us, but we'll save that in our box so we can use it for another decorative band. I keep some little pieces of leather. This is kind of a balancing act. Usually I start with my longest one. I'm going to put this in right here. I'm going to drop it down right there. Now I'm going to take a piece of leather, put it over here. see if I can get a piece of leather on this jaw. We've got contour, going away. It's got a tape to it, so this is kind of one of those things you have to get this in here. Tighten it up. This is going to be off. It's not too tight. You can take your fingers, keep moving it around. Get pretty close. That's no bad. So we're going to give this a little bit of tightening. And double check again, we're off again, so push it down. Oh, there it was. We're going to call that good. Give it a little tighten, see if we go way off again. It's not bad. I wish it was a little better. That's pretty good. So we're going to bring this up to here now. Once again, small tool, small cuts. We're going to take that off, and even if it's a little out of balance, which it is, not bad, we're not going to come up to this edge here because it's concentric. This other stuff, it's going to have a big, long angle to it. You won't hardly see those little changes. Now if I can find the one tool that I'm missing, I think I'll use this one we haven't used today. So we're going to just start right here. Stop doing it. Now we're just going to stand here. See a little? Right, sandpaper. 400. There it is. Now we've got a nice mouthpiece right here. It's really smooth. Let's take it out and see what it looks like. This will have to have a bunch of hand sanding on it before we put the finish on it. But all my pieces back up there. So there's the body of the caul. Everything looks pretty good. And I think with a little bit of wax, that'll go on in and be pretty good. So there it is. From start to finish, it didn't take that long. We'll do some hand sanding, and typically on the hand sanding, it's easy to go this way and spin it around in the lathe, but all these scratches really aren't kind of with the grain, even though this burl doesn't have much of a grain. But I'll sand it this way and all up and down, and then we'll end up getting a coat of finish on it. Next part on this is, once we get everything fit in, we'll go ahead and make the soundboard and all the little stoppers and reed components for it. And then we'll be done besides finishing. Well, we've got our duck haul all finished up here. I've sanded it down. I've finished going kind of this way on the caul, all along these little curves and radiuses. And I finished it up to 800 grit. And so now what we're going to do is give it its first stage of finish. And it's nice to give it something obviously on the inside and on the outside because it's kind of a moisture-rich environment in there. So what we're doing here is we're going to use some of this Hellsman teak oil. It seems to be really fast drying, puts a great coating on there, and you can actually, if you want to do this multiple times between drying and then sanding, it's like an oil finish on a gun stock or anything else. So works really good. So the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to put him on a hook here, and down he goes. And he'll kind of want to float up here, he or she, I don't know what it is really. We'll kind of let that soak a little bit. You'll see a few bubbles coming up, and this is always kind of a big reveal to see what the grain looks like too. It really makes the grain pop on it. So, okay, we're going to pull it out. I'm going to let him kind of drain off, and I've got a little stack of paper towels here. We're still draining pretty good. And I'm really not going to worry about wiping the inside of it out. It's going to be its kind of one and only finish, and we want it to kind of soak in the best we can. It's, it's a sanded inside there and everything else, so it's a little bit on the rougher side, but it'll soak up the oil really fast, being that it's kind of a little bit rougher finish inside. Let me get this wiped off, and I'll bring it up to the camera, and you guys take a look at it. All right. I'll leave it just a little on the wet side. You can kind of take a look at it. And that's the myrtle wood. And myrtle wood comes from the Pacific Northwest, the Oregon region, and through there. And you can get big myrtle wood pieces that are really gorgeous. This one here's got some pretty good character in it. Little borehole or bugs in there that got in there. It's kind of cool. Anyway, and this is that piece of flamed, a lot of people would call it flame birch, but I know it's not birch. It's more in the locust family, but it's still got that same kind of rosy pink flaming through it, which is kind of cool. All right, I'm going to finish wiping this down and we'll get the other piece. Get our little fella here. It wants to float a little bit too, not near as much as a big one. One thing you don't want to do is put these together now and when they're wet, because it'll be just like glue and you won't be able to get them apart. So let them dry for a day or so before you assemble them back on. And we might have to sand this. It's such a tight fit here. Just any finish on here will tighten it up. So there'll be a little bit of sanding on the outside and maybe on the inside of the barrel piece, or the body of the caul. All right, so there's that. I'm going to slide it off. Give it a wiping. There's not much to see on this, but I'll show it to you anyway. It does have some good little character through it, almost more than the other piece of the caul. I wouldn't expect that. Actually, this didn't come out as pretty as what I thought it was going to when we first started. But it's still a pretty cool little caul. So we're going to let this set up, and we'll decide what our secondary coatings are going to be. Once this is dry, we can give it just a light scuff of sandpaper again, nothing too crazy. We can go with a CA coating, get some glue on there, and then get a coating of that on there, and then sand that down and put a exterior and interior acrylic lacquer on it. That's another way to kind of seal up the last part of it. But anyway, first coat. I'll grab this one. We'll slightly put them together. I'll pull them back apart. There it is. Gonna be really pretty. We'll get the final finish on it here you'll get to see it again when we put the soundboard and reed in it and see it as a finished caul. Anyway, thanks a lot, and we'll see you soon. Like that. And we're going to dip it on down in there. It kind of wants to float. And you can see bubbles coming up out of it. There's where it's soaking in the wood. That's the first piece. You can kind of see some of that graining in there. Our Padauk went real dark except for that lighter area there on the side grain. Alright, I'm going to set that down. We're going to see if we can drop the other piece of it like this, because it'll glue itself together and you'll never get it apart. Right, so right there it is. There's our first coat on it. And we're going to let it set for a day or two. And then we're going to come back and see what our next finish we want to do. Thanks, and bye.